Monsieur Anber.
Yes, sir, my brother.
Yeah.
Just in case you forget, okay? Just in case you forget, I figured I'd bring this subliminal message here. Yeah.
We have a lot of questions to get to. Some I'm sure you've heard before, but some will also surprise you along the way. Some will also be fan submitted. So for the first ever Rival official question Q&A.
This is our first ever Rival official, huh?
Rival official
good,
Q&A,
good.
but we'll also go into different boxing topics as well. Okay. And one of them is the art of coaching, the art of training, and the mentorship, which is one of the topics we're going to cover today. So let me ask you first, Russ, what would you say, or how important is the scale of a fighter's success attributed to the boxer's trainer or the fighter's trainer?
Matt, look, I think it has a lot to do with when a fighter first started boxing, what kept him in the game, what taught him. I think that means so much, because a fighter could start off, and if he's off to a bad start and he's not taken care of or taught properly when he begins as a young kid, he'll just turn and go to another sport at that point. I think that's how important it is for a teacher, a mentor, a father figure, a psychologist, a big brother, whatever you want to call it, to give support to that kid who's now coming in thinking he loves boxing, but has never done it before, never been hit, doesn't know what to expect from it, and now walks into a gym, drives up enough courage to walk into a gym, and that first person who meets him and how he treats that kid, I think is vital. I think that's the difference between keeping a kid in the program and not keeping him in the program. I think that's huge. And it'd be interesting to hear what other fighters have to say about that, about their first initiation into boxing and why they stuck it out. And it's very rare that you're going to see fighters go on to great careers starting out with somebody who didn't give them a good base and a good start. Somebody who wasn't a good gym, wasn't a good coach, and a fighter stayed there nonetheless and went on to do something. I think that's very, very rare.
Okay, you're talking about the early stages really of not even necessarily a fighter at that point, but somebody wants to take up the sport of boxing.
Right. Well, that's because you said mentorship, so that's why. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
As we get along, though, and if we look at some of the amateur fighters, pro fighters, what would you say when you measure a fighter who becomes a world champion or at least has success in the amateur ranks, that it's skill and innate, and how much of it is also depending on the relationship with the trainer?
I think the difference in that is that those fighters that you're talking about, they're so good, they're going to succeed. They're meant to succeed. That's how gifted they are. Now what happens is they're going to start to meet the most successful in their weight class, if you will. So what starts off as a pyramid when they start in boxing, and the selection is vast and the opponents are vast, now gets down to that pyramid where there's only really a few at that level. So at that point, you're meeting somebody that's just as good as you are, just as skilled, just as talented, punches just as hard. Now, a corner could be a big difference. A trainer could be a big difference in just how he got his guy ready. Just enough to be that 10% better than the opponent could lie a lot in what the trainer does, what's said in the corner, how the corner is handled in the event of an injury. I still think to this day one of the greatest compliments I ever received was from Usyk, and I'd like to think it made a difference. Those little bits are so important in a fight, which is why sometimes you see fighters go on and then will change their team because they know they're coming up against the best there is to offer. They want somebody just that much better in the corner to guide them because they've got all the tools necessary. They just need the right jockey on the horse.
How would you say the balance between the trainer's impact during training camp for these elite level fighters or for fighters who have more success versus the cornerman work the night of the fight will have more of an influence on the fighter's success itself?
I think both. I think both are important. The thing that we're seeing a lot of now that I see is that in a lot of cases it still seems to be where the boxer is calling the shots and the trainer does what the boxer tells him he wants to do. That's a far cry from what the old school used to be about the trainers telling you what to do. And I think the trainers who have success, I think, are the ones who are still the boss in the kitchen. They're still the one calling the shots. and there's a lot of guys you can name who do that, and just look at their success rate. Robert Garcia, Buddy, Teddy Atlas. You name guys along who have come along and done great work for an extended period of time. They've been the boss. They call the shots, and they call the shots in training camp. They call the shots in the ring. And I think that's vital. I think that's important. And I think fighters look for that guidance. That's why they hire trainers. That's why you're hired as a trainer, because they want to do what you tell them to do. So, and I think the ones who do their own thing are either supremely gifted, and can get away with doing whatever they want. I think that's very rare. But I think for a greater part, I think that a great trainer is going to guide a great fighter, and there's going to be a great chemistry. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, Matt, that you're going to end up with, a guy who's a great trainer necessarily going to gel properly with another great fighter. That doesn't always happen. Doesn't mean he's not a great trainer. Doesn't mean he's not a great fighter. But the gelling is important, and that connection, that faith, that trust that you have in the guy, I think is the most important thing.
Now, you brought up Usyk not long ago. Let's turn back to your experience in the 2024 year. When you look at the ring fighter of the year and the fighter of the year, pretty much by all accounts, depending on what media publication you were following, Alexander Usyk had the 2 massive victories against Tyson Fury. On a personal level, can you recount that experience from leading up to the fights and also, of course, on fight night?
What's crazy is that we've entered this month now, January 2025, and I look back and I say, wow, it's already been 12 months. At this time last year, we were in full-fledged training for the upcoming fight, the first scheduled meeting between Fury and Usyk. We were in training camp, and we were getting ready for that. And it's incredible how a year just flies by. And when you think about it, what we waited for over 2 years, and we talked about it for a long time, over 2 years trying to get Fury into the ring, suddenly entered the ring twice in the space of May to December. How many months is that?
About 7 months.
And he's back in the ring. Got him twice. Couldn't get him for over 2 years, but got him back in the ring twice in 7 months. A little bit surreal, I think, when I look back on it now. I said after the first fight, when Usyk won, was that, well, that's it. Like, I've reached the top. I've reached the pinnacle. I've been in the corner for the heavyweight champion of the world. Had to deal with a cut, so felt like there was a purpose. Attended training camp, felt there was a purpose, felt part of it. Became first undisputed heavyweight champion since Lennox did it, some 25 years previous. How does it get better than this? I go from downhill from here. It's all downhill, right? And then you get right back into it, and boxing's weird that way. Then you get into the rematch, dominating performance. It was relatively easy compared to the work in the first fight because dealing with the delays. I've always said that Usyk was overtrained for that first fight because of the delays. He went right back into camp, and he's not the kind of guy to take it easy. He goes right back to page 1 and starts over like he hadn't trained. Like he hadn't trained in 5 months. He goes right back in and starts from there. So he worked hard for a long period of time. Not to mention before when he was still getting ready, just in case they pulled the trigger on the fight. The second fight was almost like seemed like we were just breezing through it. Everything was in the fight was breezing. Another round for us. Another round for us. Here we go. Another round for us. And he's putting on a performance that every time Fury hits him or tries to mount an attack, 6 punches come back. Okay, you forgot about that 1 punch from Fury. Bing, he hits. 7 punches come back, and he's just imposing himself. And it just seemed so much easier the second time around. Yet through all that, Matt, I got to say that when you're there, it's hard to enjoy what's happening because you're just concentrating on the work. You're concentrating on the win. And we got it. And then I realized that coming home from this, December 21st, the fight, come back home on the 23rd, and realize the next time I'm going to be in the ring is going to be with some kids making their pro debut and some guys in their second or third fight, here in Montreal. And I'm doing the same work, wrapping the hands the same way, come with the same intensity and desire to win for that kid as I did for Usyk.
On a personal level, after the first fight when Usyk becomes undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, you're part of that team, but you're also part of that camp leading up to the first fight, and where Usyk gave you a little bit of a shout-out in the post-fight press conference. Yeah. For people who didn't necessarily hear, can you comment a little bit on how that went in the relationship during training camp?
Look, it was almost kind of funny because during training camp, he would refer to myself and Yuri, his head coach, he would call us Dushnila. right? What's Dushnila? And he tried to get the translation of that. And when they got it, I realized I get what he's trying to say, but they didn't get the right word. They determined it as being, we were buzzkill. You know, we were like, we killed the buzz. But that's not what he was trying to say. What he was trying to say was we were ball busters. That's what me and his coach were ball. And we both sit there with our arms crossed, you know, telling him what to do, you know, and he'd say, we're Dushnila. So that's how it came up in the press conference, you know, you Dushnila. He said, you Dushnila, you were ball busters. And he went on to say how, you know, blah, 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 training, working, defense, offense, blah, blah. We were always on him, you know, to try to get that. And he nailed it. Like, that's exactly the way we were. Yuri and I were so determined to want to win that fight. We were so determined that we were going to win that. There's been very few fights in my life where, I mean, there's been a few, you know, hopefully in a book I'm going to talk about, you know, the fights I really wanted to win. Well, that one is up there, and you know why. That one is definitely up there. We wanted to win so bad, and we did.
What do you think separates Usyk from maybe some of the other boxers you've been a part of or some of the other greats? Why is he able to have this much success throughout his career?
You know what? I'll name three guys. Usyk, Lomachenko, Gennady Golovkin. Just three guys like that. Three Eastern Europeans.
Correct.
You couldn't say one bad word about them in terms of their arrogance, their being above themselves, looking down on people. You couldn't speak. They're so grounded and so in touch with reality on what they do that they bring it every day to the gym. And it's not an accident of the success that they have had. And if you want to go back, you can look at the Klitschko's, Lennox. You know, there are certain people you can look at that just fit that same mold again and again of being so focused on what they want to do, so honest to themselves, so disciplined in their training, in their off training, so disciplined in what they do in their career that it leads to the success that they've had. And I believe that. And I don't believe this new age approach that fighters seem to be taking, that they're not a fighter when a contract is not signed, and 8 weeks before a fight they go into camp and now they figure it's time to be a fighter. I don't subscribe to that theory. I don't think the greats of the past subscribe to that theory. And I certainly know that, you know, Usyk and Lomachenko don't subscribe to that theory. I know Beterbiev doesn't subscribe to that theory. And, you know, I think it's an important recipe that fighters should remember, that your job as a fighter doesn't stop the minute the fight's over. You know, I think you're a fighter 12 months of the year, 365 days of the year. And the fact that you blow up in weight in between fights, then have to take it off again, is a sign of indiscipline that you may get away with when you're young, but you don't end up getting away with it for the whole career. And then when you try to be disciplined, discipline is you have to train it as well. You know, discipline must be trained, and you can't just turn it on and turn it off. It has to be something that you're consistently doing. And I think these guys that I mentioned live a disciplined life. They do it every day. The practice of that goes on every day, which is why they're able to do it.
When we look back on Usyk's career, he had a ton of accomplishments, not just, of course, being the undisputed heavyweight champion, but when you look back at his cruiserweight, the amount of times he traveled in hostile environments to win big fights. Can you explain some of the highlights over the years of when your relationship started with Usyk to what it is now?
Listen, I think, and we should look this up. You know, you're the statistician. You should look this up. But, you know, I don't know of a boxer in this modern era, of what they're calling now the 4-belt era. Like, that's how we're going to define eras now. You have the 1-belt era, then you have the 2-belt era, then you have the 3-belt era, now the 4-belt era. We're going to go to the 9-belt era soon, right? I defy anybody to find a fighter who has had that much success at that level on the road than Alexander Usyk. Now, I could be wrong. I'm just going off the top of my head now and being involved with it. I mean, I'm thinking about the places we traveled and being the B side, like they say, you know, the visitor into all these fights against world champions, against world-class opposition, and being the B side, including the first time I worked with him, which was in California, you know, in 2016, I believe it was. And boy, time flies. You know, 2016 started with Usyk. I think it was his 11th pro fight. You know, and, you know, I've been with him that whole time, and where we have gone and the places in the world that it's taken us to, and fought the people that we have fought along the way in their home. There is no way, a fighter, you could think that a fighter is going to have that kind of success going to all those different places and winning. It's truly remarkable.
Yep. And maybe finally to top off on the Usyk conversation, he's got a lot of fans out there. Some people are wondering if you have any sort of insight on who Usyk is, also maybe something that they would appreciate, whether it's something to do with his training, maybe it's sense of humor, something you can elaborate on Usyk.
It's without a doubt I talked about his discipline. I talked about his convictions as a man, his faith. I've spoken about his love for his family. He generally likes everybody that he meets. When he talks to you or a complete stranger, when you look at him, I've seen him talk with complete strangers, and he speaks with them as if they were friends, as if they were somebody that have spoken before, and they're reuniting and talking again. There's something special about this guy. There's something unique, I guess, in a heavyweight, and I can't describe that feeling, but it was kind of the same feeling that, my father's generation had when Joe Louis was around. It was like a larger-than-life human. For us, Muhammad Ali. I remember Guy Jutra, who's in the Hall of Fame, said to me once that being around Ali, and I didn't know what this meant until I got around. Said being around him was like being in the presence of God. There was a special aura about him that you couldn't explain, but it was in the air. It was thick. That this was a superior being almost. And when the first time I met him, I felt that. And I remember being in North Carolina for a fight with Bone Crusher Smith against Donovan Razor Ruddock. We were doing the broadcast for CBC television. And we're in the lobby of the hotel, an empty lobby, just people at the reception. There's nothing going on. Ali walked in. Matt, within minutes, doors were opening that I didn't even know existed. People were coming out. It was like a movie. People were coming out of all areas of the hotel. Within seconds, the lobby was filled up. And I remember one scene when a lady came out of the kitchen or out of the cleaning area, and she was a small lady, and she walked through the crowd, and she was sticking her arm as far as she could reach through the people that were surrounding Ali, just so she could touch his hand, just to touch his skin. That's the effect. She couldn't see him, he couldn't see her, but she just wanted to reach out and touch him. And I thought, wow, this is really powerful, like this is the effect he had. And I remember what Guy said, and it stayed in my mind. So Usyk sometimes has that aura over people, like they feel like he's their friend right away. He's a special human. And I think Anthony Joshua, to a degree, falls into that as well. The amount of people that Anthony touches and how nice he is, and how people feel comfortable around him when he talks, and that endearing smile. So not everybody has that gift, but those are, Usyk's one that gets away with it.
Russ, it's been 20 years and more now of Rival's existence.
Oh, we're talking about Rival.
Can you explain?
Wait. If we're talking about Rival,
yeah.
we should put this up again for
That's
the
right.
subliminal message. Yeah, okay, very good. Just so you remember, okay, it depends on what you're going to ask me.
That's right. And for everybody also worldwide who'll be tuning in, because not everybody gets to see you every day at the head office here in Montreal, but can you explain the origin story of Rival, why it started for you, and when did it start?
Matt, it's a good question. When I look back on it, it's a little bit crazy. I had been selling boxing equipment since 1985.
What's with the quotation? What do you mean by what's with the quotation?
Selling, right? I've been selling boxing equipment. That wasn't my own, if you will, right? And I used to sell equipment simply because I had a great contact in getting it in the United States. My friend, the late John Davenport, who we talk about mentors, he was one of my mentors. I love John Davenport. It's somebody I greatly miss. And I know he'd be proud of what he's seeing today. He introduced me to a company where I could get equipment. And I introduced this company to Canada. But I wasn't worried about selling equipment. I was worried about keeping my gym going, keeping Ring 83 going, financing my amateur team, traveling the province, traveling the country, traveling to the USA in the summer for training camps, and going anywhere I could, taking my fighters to as many tournaments as I could, everywhere, Canada, the US. So I was selling equipment just to do that. It was to feed that. And I did that for years, right up until 1990s, just before 97, I guess maybe 1997, when suddenly my feet got cut out from under me by a company in the States who decided that they didn't need me anymore, and they basically got rid of me. So as a result of that, I found out later I wasn't the only one to suffer this, and two other friends of mine who went on to form Title Boxing also suffered the same fate. And they called me and said, Russ, would you like to be our representative in Canada? So I immediately jumped at the opportunity because I knew this was good. And almost instantly, I was able to introduce the Title brand to Canada, and with great success. And I realized, and I used to give, I would talk with Dave and Tony about these things, primarily with Dave, and we would talk about improvements in boxing equipment and different things, innovations that I want to do. I love thinking about that stuff. I loved, tweaking equipment, making it better, So I did that for them, and we started to grow. Then we hit a time when the American dollar just became so strong that it was really difficult to earn a living. And after working a whole year and selling for I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, I barely broke even, on sale. I said, this is bad. And I started tinkering with the idea of, I wanted to do something that was mine, that I could put my touch on. I wanted to do certain designs of equipment. I wanted certain innovative things that I had in mind I wanted to do. And started thinking about it, how I could do it. And out of the blue, I get a visit from a manufacturer who was touring North America or Canada, trying to sell his wares of motorcycle equipment, leather jackets, gloves, chaps, saddlebags for motorcycles. But they had started a division of boxing equipment. So he came to see me and asked me about this. Would I like to buy boxing equipment? He asked somebody, who do I know in boxing? And they said, oh, we know Russ Anber. And he came over. And so I told him a little bit about my ideas for Rival. And I said, what's the minimum? And he said, oh, the minimum is going to be a container load of equipment. And I said, oh, Mr. Tariq, thank you very much. But I said, there's no way I have the money to do that. I can't buy that. And he says, okay, well, if that changes, let me know. And off he went. The next day, I'm up in my office, and I get a call from downstairs, and reception tells me that the gentleman is back. Mr. Tariq is back to see me. I said, okay, send him up. And he said, oh, Mr. Russ, I don't sleep last night. I said, why not? He said, because I've been thinking about your plans for Rival. I think Rival was going to do great things. Whatever you want, tell me, I will make it for you. No minimums. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, look, I only got about $2,000 to my name. So this is like early 2000. I said, I only got $2,000 to my name. He said, I'll take it. I said, well, if you take that, I promise every order after that, even if it's only $1 more, I'll increase the order. He said, okay, no problem. And he did, and that was the first order we placed. And it was an order for the Quebec Boxing Federation. We made them headgears and sparring gloves and groin guards. We made it, and it was a great success. Everybody loved it. And from then, we just started innovating, and I was able now to bring all the features which still exist today in our brand and Rival. When we started, my first idea of designing gloves and how I wanted them made and the features on them that we still use to this day. And I realized throughout that time that people weren't buying the brand, they were buying from Russ Anber. And I was able to introduce 3 brands into the Canadian marketplace and have success with all 3. And of course, the most now with Rival. And ironically, with Dave and Tony at Title Boxing, they were the first American company to help us that I represented here in Canada when I introduced Title Boxing. And they became the first company to introduce Rival to the U.S. market. So we still have a great relationship till this day.
Can you elaborate on the name? Who came up with the name, or was there a debate, and why has the name, do you think, been
Matt,
a good one?
I would love to sit here and lie to you and tell you, how brilliant I was in coming up with this great name for the company, but I can't tell a lie because I'll get caught out. My brother actually came up with this name. My brother came up with the name of Rival, and I thought it's perfect. It's the same in English as it is in French. Which was great considering we're here in Montreal, and I think it epitomized and defined who we were as a company. I mean, put this into perspective, Matt. We're a small company out of Canada. Me, basically was the company, and Julia started with me, and then Stephanie for a while, a little while later, I should say. And we were trying to infiltrate a market dominated by Americans, dominated by Latinos, in companies that are in the biggest boxing market in the United States, and we trying to infiltrate that. And we succeeded with no money, with no great marketing, nothing we could do, just by making good equipment and just by word of mouth. And it just goes to show that old way of thinking, which I hope is the reason for our success, in that we're not all sizzle and no steak. We didn't have a lot of sizzle, but we had the steak. And I think the word of mouth, just carried on, that people would say, hey, I got these gloves. They're great. Next thing you know, the phone is ringing. Can I get these gloves? Oh, can I get these gloves? And then for the first time ever, Jean-Pascal wore our gloves on HBO. He had worn them in the second Diacono fight, and then wore them on HBO. The first fighter to wear gloves on HBO was Jean-Pascal. And I remember that, and it meant a lot. And I think it gave a certain identity to the brand that we were there in the big leagues. And we've been there ever since. And yeah.
There's been, when you look back at when you started Rival in 2003, the amount of brands that existed in boxing compared to now has to have expanded beyond. So I don't know if your blueprint of trying to have a life in boxing and also sell equipment without any minimum purchasing is the reason why we have countless brands now. But what do you think separates Rival from the pack that seems to be ever growing of people wanting to start their own brand?
Okay, I was expecting a different question. I thought you were saying, why are there so many brands starting out now?
Well, you can maybe go into that. They must have heard your story and want to copy the blueprint.
Yeah, nobody's going to ever admit to that, right? No one. But we know that that's true. It's like all of a sudden they saw a company emerge, and then they said, well, why can't I do that? And so many of them, I look at their evolution of the people behind them, and what they did prior to introducing their brand was they were repping other brands. They were creating their name by representing other brands in different territories, and then threw those people under the bus and turned around and said, I'm going to do it myself, and had all the contacts, and they infiltrated the marketplace, if you will. But the difference, Matt, that I think, to get back to your original question, the difference was, and it's something that I stick by today, while other brands are businessmen trying to infiltrate the boxing world, we're boxing people trying to infiltrate the business world. And I believe that to this day, and I believe that the most important thing we do is to make a product for boxing people, by boxing people. And I think that's the most important thing.
I don't know if you will relate to this, but I think you will, because my first relationship or first encounter with the brand of Rival Boxing was not long after the gym, Ring 83. And I'm in my late teens. This is probably around 3 to 4 years of existence of the Rival brand. Mm-hmm. And I still remember to this day, there was Julia, who's now, of course, at Rival UK, Stephanie here. You were there. We had Jocelyn, a designer.
Jocelyn, yeah.
We were about 5 or 6 total people in a small building.
Not even 5 or 6.
Yeah, in a small building in Montreal. And then we're looking back at it now as we enter 2025, and it's a worldwide company, which seems to be growing. So I am sometimes impressed by how we've evolved as a brand and as a company. So I don't know if you sometimes sit back also thinking that it's surprising even to you that we're considered one of the best.
It's not surprising. I'm in a state of shock because I'll tell you what, if I would have ever tried to put together what everyone says you have to do now, make a business plan. If I would have put a plan together, I would have failed because it would have scared me off so much of putting a plan together. It would have just made me cry. I said, I'm just going to go along and still treat it. And again, when I started this was a means of revenue for me as an income. This wasn't about starting a brand. Maybe that's what the difference is with other people. For me, it wasn't about starting a brand. I needed equipment for my fighters. I needed to have equipment, not just to sell equipment, because if I did just want to sell equipment, I could have made the cheapest glove, sold it for the cheapest amount, sold thousands of them, and made more money than selling high-end expensive stuff, right? But I couldn't do that. I couldn't have a brand or make equipment that I wasn't using in my gym. So I needed equipment for my gym. I needed for my fighters, and I needed to create a revenue for myself so that I could continue funding my trainer's career. With my new guys starting out where we're not making big money. I needed to live. I needed to eat as well, So I needed to create a revenue stream. I didn't start it as a brand. I started because Oh, I have a contact with an equipment company, with a manufacturer. They can make equipment for me that my fighters can actually use in the gym. Okay, good. We need that, because I don't have to give it to somebody else. I'll make my own. And we did. And all our stuff that we made, I think when we started Rival, we started off with a high-end sparring glove, which is still available to this day, a high-end bag glove, which is still available to this day, headgear, groin guard, punch mitts. That's what we started out with, 5 pieces of equipment. But all of those were able to be put into gyms immediately for the best fighters around. Like this wasn't like the cheap stuff. This was all that pros can use. This was designed for industrial strength use. And we did it. And I think, doing that and just continuing to build something good, because I wanted it to be good so my fighters could use it, I think helped with our evolution. And, okay, we did it. Okay, on to the next one. We got made a little more money. Okay, invest it in, do it again, buy some more stuff. And that's what we did. And I didn't treat it like a business. I treated it like it was part of the gym. It was helping to fund the gym. It was helping to fund my fighters. And I think maybe that contributed to the success to a degree.
If you look, you mentioned a little bit of some of the products. You didn't go into specifics. I think that sparring glove was the RS1 at the time.
Yeah.
So is that your favorite personal Rival product, or is it the Guerrero fight glove?
Good question. I think it's different. I think both are different. I think the RS1 featured an innovation that I had been toying with since I started coaching fighters, and that lace track system with our patented angled cuff was the exact way that I used to tie gloves on to fighters, which I still do in that manner today. So being able to bring that to fruition and bring it to light and being able to produce that vision that I had from many years ago, I always said, I want to make a glove like this, To be able to do that is really special. And some of the other products that we did, the RB1 strapping system, I thought that was genius, that you could put that on. The Guerrero fight glove took a while to get to where it is, but we kept tweaking it until one day I slid my hand into the glove, and that's it. It fits perfectly. That's exactly what we wanted in a glove. And I'm very proud of that. The fit of that glove was remarkable, but the RS1 is always going to hold a special place in my heart because that was the first one.
All right, Russ, in closing, the Guerrero Pro Fight Glove, seeing it on Usyk, the world champion, seeing it on so many of these fighters from all levels, no discrimination, whether you're starting out pro, whether you're a world champion, and maybe mostly proud of the fact, I think one of the lines is that these gloves that you've designed and eventually and tweak, and everybody here at Rival were able to kind of go, okay, this is the Guerrero Pro Fight Glove and we're happy with it, but it's chosen to be worn by so many fighters. How much can you elaborate on that, and how proud of you about that fact?
I should turn this on you now.
All right, go ahead.
Because remember when just after you started out and you took over the job of doing special projects and trying to deal with pro fighters to wear our gloves, you remember?
This was probably around 2008, 9-ish, something along those lines.
Just when we're starting to get the glove going, like it's okay, this is starting. We're having confidence now that we got a product here. And it was difficult, right? Because nobody would give us the faith in that glove. And I remember Sergio Martinez, who used all our stuff in training, used all our clothing in his fight. No, he wasn't convinced that he was going to use that because he had used Reyes for so many years, Okay, no problem. And I said to you one day, I said, soon people are going to come. We're not going to have to chase people to wear our gloves. People are going to come to us. And to me, the pinnacle of that was when Anthony Joshua beat Charles Martin for the heavyweight championship of the world. And at that time, people are wearing our gloves here and there. Yes, can I wear your gloves? Okay, no problem. The fight comes on, and they pan into the dressing room of Charles Martin. And prior to that fight, I think like a week prior to the fight, we get a call from Matchroom, and Matchroom says, we need you to send us over gloves for the Joshua card. This is what they said, the Joshua card. I'm thinking they need gloves for the undercard. I said, okay, but I haven't got any matching colors. Send us whatever you've got. Okay, so I think we put together like 8 or 9 pairs and shipped them over. And I think they even left from the Vegas office, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about dates, but we shipped them over. Again, I'm thinking for the undercard. Watching the fight, boom, pans to the dressing room. There's a picture of Charles Martin wearing a pair of the black and red gloves that we sent over. I said, wow, check that out. Charles Martin's chose to wear our gloves for the fight. That's crazy. Then they go to Joshua's room. He's dressed in all white. He's wearing blue gloves, blue and white rival gloves that he chose. I said, what? We had no idea. Now, up until that point, I think he was like 16-0. He had worn another brand for his whole career. I think he wore Grants throughout his whole career. And unbeknownst to myself, like I had no idea. And Elvis is my friend, like I'm not going to, we didn't go after him. He put these gloves on. And that's when I realized, that people are choosing to wear it. And that's still the motto that I hold true to today, that, it's not, if you're just looking for sponsorship, that's not what we're about. We're about you liking our equipment, wanting to wear it, whether it's sponsored or not. You want to wear the glove. And I think Anthony Joshua, to me, was the proof of that. And then that just followed with the great fighters like Lomachenko, Usyk, Beterbiev, David Benavidez, Xander Zayas, and go on and on, Keith Thurman, of guys who wore our gloves without us soliciting them. They came to us because they wanted to wear the rival gloves because they liked the way it felt. And that, to me, is the ultimate compliment of all for rival, that these guys choose to wear. And I always say, I used to say it about Joshua, but now you can add Usyk to the mix. Both of these guys could buy my company with their pocket change. You know what I mean? They could choose to wear any glove they want in the world, and they choose to wear ours. Does it get better than that, bro?
Thus concludes the first edition of the Rival Podcast. Mr. Anber, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, just in case you forgot, Matt,
Yep.
And I got to say, you
know that you should be giving that one to Stephanie, right? Because she's waiting now impatiently for you to drive her home, and she's the real boss.
But for me and you, this is the one that applied. I talked to your dad the other day, and I reflected on when you first came to the gym, and your dad called and said you wanted to come to the gym. And I remember you walked in there as a meek, sensitive teenage kid. You walked in there, and you seemed so fragile at the time, and you hung in there despite verbal abuse, reserved for only a few, and you stuck it out. And all these years later, you were there since the beginning, virtually the beginning of Rival. And you're here still all these years later. And that's the same kind of relationships that we have with the other people in here, and the relationships that we want, with our fighters. And I think that's something that separates us from the rest of the competition, if you will. This is about, I'm in the fight game. I know how difficult it is to be in this game, and it's important to have the relationships and that people can count on you, and they believe in what you do, and they want to be there for you as well. And I think those relationships that we had, like with you, mean something, and they play out in the long run.
Thank you very much, Russ. I'll make sure to keep that and reference that video for the next contract negotiations.
Just remember this right here. Right. Yes, indeed.